So just a reminder that we've got a shared collaborative document for this session and every other session. You can access it through the Unconference program. There's a link on the 4 to 4:30 session page to the collaborative document for this session. Just look at Nicola and Karen's names and you'll see it right beside there. That's a great place to just open it up, have it going during the session or afterwards if you've got any thoughts to contribute, resources to share. And it's also a really lovely way to keep in touch with other people from this session if things come up where you know, oh, I could help them out or they could help me with this, because this is all about collaboration. That's why we're here. But yeah, no mai, haere mai, welcome. Really, really pleased to be able to introduce Nicola, Karen and Anne, who will be facilitating this session where we can talk about making local real and how can community-led enterprise solutions succeed. We've still got a few people just joining. Oh, there's Anne, she's just joined. If James, you could make her a co-host as well, that'd be fantastic. So we're going to keep everyone muted just for the first bit of this session whilst we get the scene set by Nicola, Karen and Anne. And they'll be taking you through explaining how we're going to run this. So over to you, Nicola, to get us started.
Kia ora, and thanks Jessie and James for keeping everything running so smoothly. So what we're planning to do is for me to start with just a couple of minutes overview. Then we've got the wonderful Karen from Te Puke who will share a case study. Hi Karen. And in the background we have Anne keeping an eye on the questions because what we thought we'd do is have a group discussion. So when you want to say something, use the go to manage participants and click the raise hand function, and then we'll be able to manage it that way. If that doesn't work for you, just give us a wave, but I can't see everyone at once. So that's just a way to help out. Then at the end, Karen and I will just make some brief comments before we wrap up. So why are we here? Karen and I both saw this opportunity to speak about the challenges of being in provincial New Zealand, and Karen's case study will make that really clear. We also think with the COVID-19 situation, there may be even more challenges coming with greater unemployment and pressure on economic situations. So some of what we can call essential services may become under more pressure, and communities may wish to fill the gap, and we'll hear about Karen's example. We want to talk about what makes community-led solutions work. What are the ingredients of success? How do we get them working? How do we sustain them? And we want to just briefly touch on the fact that the government has a partnership through Department of Internal Affairs with Arkina Foundation and with CENT, which is the Community Enterprise Network Trust, to do this Impact Initiative program. And I'm really lucky to be on the sector working group for that. So I've got a connection. So if you want to stay connected in this space, feel free to use me too. I'm from Whanganui, and we have a trust called Thrive Whanganui, and our purpose is, in fact, our exact purpose statement is enabling profit for purpose enterprises to flourish from Whanganui. So we're all about building the capability and the ingredients that help other people run successful enterprises. And with that, I hand over to the wonderful Karen to share some of the success and challenges she's had in the last few years, I guess, with your Te Puke Centre. Go ahead, Karen.
Oh, kia ora koutou. I'm Karen Summerhays, and I'm the chairperson of the Te Puke Centre Charitable Trust, and along with another couple of trusts, and I'm a senior community development advisor for the Whakatane District Council. So that's sort of a little bit about me and why I'm thinking I can speak about this. It was about 3.5 years ago that Te Puke had a big community meeting and to identify the gaps, and specifically in our social infrastructure. You know, things came up like, you know, the swimming pool and the skate park, and there was a lot of other social infrastructure. But one of the things that spiked me was the lack of a proper information and visitors centre. We have a lot of seasonal workers, there's a lot of information provision, and there's no real one place in Te Puke that connects everybody together. And we sort of suffer a little bit about being too close to Tauranga, where a lot of agencies are based, but a lot of agencies don't spend a lot of time in the outlying towns. So how do we attract them there, and how do we accommodate them to actually come to our town? So the idea of a community co-working space was also raised. So we went ahead and formed the trust, and we also developed at that point that we would want to operate as a social enterprise slash community enterprise these days, that would allow us to become financially sustainable over some time. You know, we were all suffering from the same problem of philanthropics supporting you for 3 years and then you're on your own. So we didn't want to fall into that trap. Then along came this idea that the post office services were up for grabs in Te Puke, and rather than it go into a pharmacy or a bookshop, we put in a pitch to take it over in its place. And it was quite important that the site had been operated as a postal service for 125 years. There was a lot of community buy-in to keeping the post office in its remaining space. The feedback we got was the post office was a bumping station. It was where Mavis met Jane, and they had a bit of a chat, and there was no hurry to leave. So that whole thing around lingering longer was a big element of why we decided we'd take over this space. So we ran a Pledge Me campaign, raised 65,000 in 5 weeks, and yeah, I know, amazing. And then went ahead with the purchase of the postal services, and we opened October last year. At the moment, we employ 4 staff, and they are, the post office pays for its own footprint in the building and all of its staff, and returns a very small profit back to the trust to advance the establishment of the visitors and information co-working space. Thousands of hours from the voluntary trust and the directors, and interestingly enough, the whole trust is women, and it wasn't by design, it was just that we all put our hands up. And the Old Boys Network is really, you know, they keep saying, oh, what about gender balance? And we all have a bit of a laugh about that. We had some help from Akina, and that was really appreciated. They helped us connect with Russell McVeigh, who set up all our trust deeds and our company documents to allow us to apply for charitable status, and we flew through the charitable status thing. So that was hugely important, having that huge amount of input and that professional advice. So from the point of view of the challenges that we've faced, and you know, we aren't out of the woods, and this COVID operation, the COVID thing that's happening has pressed us financially. We've had to shut the post shop, so we're hemorrhaging money at the moment. The building is bigger than the post office, so we have had to consider how we're going to develop the rest of the building. It's a leased building, and funders hate leased buildings. They don't want to put money into somebody else's building that's going to advance their capital, you know, investment or whatever it is. So we've come across a real lot of barriers around having a lease, not an owned building. And that was something we just didn't foresee. The philanthropic funds that we would normally apply to are really keen on delivering social services, feeding the hungry, housing the homeless, and not interested in community development. Community development has sort of lost its sexiness somehow. It's seen as a delivery from local government, but local government's not that really interested. It's a bit of a poor cousin to everything else. And so we have those barriers with local government. The lack of scale is a problem too. So things like the Provincial Growth Fund and any of those types of government funds are just not even in our ball game. We don't have a regional impact. We have a very small impact, and that's around the Te Puke region, Te Puke area. So we can't get a look in there. The DIA community-led support initiative, which is supporting some, but they've closed the gate on that, and so there's no more opportunity for other new initiatives to be funded. We have a lot of co-working, and we have a lot of seasonal workers, like I said, and they have specific needs. We want to be able to support the local industries. So we've been talking, and up until the COVID situation, looking at community support to get us running. We've got a big program. We have to refurbish a big building. We need to employ a manager, and we need to employ an admin for the community centre side of the operation. So really it's us trying to raise the profile and tell that story of community development, and that's what's not being done by local government. And we've got limited discretionary funds available to us now. The community is closing their purses on all charities. It's not just
Karen,
us.
I might just jump in. I think you've done a really good job of painting the picture of where you're at. What I'm looking for now is for people to share thoughts, ask questions, or make suggestions around how we get the ingredients for community-led success to keep building. Obviously, Karen's had a huge amount of momentum to get to the point they're at now, but still has some real challenges. So I can only see half of you. So if no one's used the hands up function yet. If there's anyone on the other screen waving at me, I can't see you.
Yeah, so just jump into that participants tab at the bottom and hit the blue hand if you do want to contribute. You can also put your questions in the chat. Be great.
Oh no, I take it back. There's Nikki. Go ahead, Nikki. Well, oh, yep.
Oh, am I here?
Yes.
You are. Thanks.
Kia ora, everyone. Thank you so much, Karen. I'm just down the road in Welcome Bay. So my question, and I might have just missed it, it's a little bit late in the afternoon, was around, the last session was around measuring impact. And how have you got numbers or stories, case studies, anything around the community buy-in for what you're doing? There's obviously your Pledge Me campaign was really successful, but what other evidence do you have to share to people to demonstrate that there's the people of Te Puke are asking for what you're offering?
That's a very good question. And had we got time and resources, we were sort of pretty rushed into buying that post office. We had the opportunity arose. So we haven't done a lot of that story, the collection of the data. We've really struggled to articulate our story, the other half of the story. The post office story was really easy, and it was just so easy because it was seen as an essential service. The other half of the story, everybody thinks that they're delivering it. The pack houses think that they've got all the pastoral care of all the seasonal workers, even if they're living in a van, all covered. And so there's quite an arrogance around industry towards anybody else helping them. So that's some of the narrative that we have heard through our latest funding campaign, where we've actually had to drill down as to why aren't you writing a check out for us? We're going to do so much. But again, we struggle with our story.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And I can absolutely relate to your experience. I understand 100% where you're coming from with respect to industry, having that covered. So just to capture what you said, it sounds like before you even drilled into numbers, it's getting that story really clear is the first challenge. Thank you.
We've got a question from Pascal. What are the responses you've been getting from funders when you've approached them, Karen?
Because the Bay of Plenty or the Western Bay of Plenty rolls on this project called Vital Signs. And the 3 big philanthropic funders are really hooked into that. Are you delivering the vital signs? And that's mostly around social services. So we fall out of their category. The other thing that we fall out of their category in is the rhetoric from them are largely, we support social enterprise. But when you look at the criteria and you go to them and say, we're running a post office to help us pay the rent so that we can be central to Te Puke, the answer is, oh, you're a commercial enterprise. So, you just can't win. And then there's only one place, that's the Lotteries Community Facility Fund, that would advance the amount of money in scale to develop a leased building. But even then we had to promise them that we would have public access to that building for 10 years before they would allow any money. And we had to come up with half the money, or a third of the money ourselves. So creating that working capital was a real challenge. And if there was a message to government, help these enterprises set up with some working capital for the first 3 years. The council said, they gave us $45,000, but then they said, well, don't come back next year. And so they expected us to be able to set up in a year. And an enterprise like this, you just can't. So that's my answer, is that it's the barriers, and especially around the lease building, has been huge.
Yeah, I can say in Whanganui, we've had similar barriers in trying to engage in getting funding for our capability support services we're offering. And we think one of the barriers is understanding what it is we're trying to do and how it is different to traditional economic development support. And it is different to charitable work that can access philanthropy where it's delivering explicit charitable outcomes against a philanthropist's priority settings. So I feel like the growth and enthusiasm in this gathering is the sort of momentum and energy I need to help build the understanding of the people we're pitching to. So it's a deeper, we're not trying to build understanding of what impact is and that the world is changing, as well as just pitch a strong, clear business case for our own activities. Now we've got a few questions coming through and a great comment from Karen too, which I guess many of us will have experienced over time, which is funders like to support new stuff. They're not good at continuous funding. And I can say I've experienced that myself too. But before I go back to a couple of the specific questions of Karen, I just want to share the prompt from Anne. Have others on this group have any insights about other ways of supporting community-led enterprise? And do these challenges resonate with other people? Here you go, I've got a little example from Trish. Would anyone like to share a comment around that? No? Okay. I'm going to go to...
Sorry, Nicola. Can I just do a quick thumbs up, thumbs down on, I guess one, like how connected you feel with others who are developing community-led enterprise initiatives from where you are. So if you're really connected, thumbs up. If you're less connected, and a thumbs down or somewhere in the middle. That was one question. And then the other is, from what you've heard, both being shared in the chat and also with Karen's story from Te Puke, are you hearing challenges that resonate with you? And again, yes, definitely hearing the similar sort of challenges, or know that your experience is different. And just inviting if anyone has a different lens or insight from their experiences to maybe jump in and share.
We've got a shy group.
A shy and quiet group, who would have thought? I wonder, Leslie, not to put you on the spot, but you've asked a good question about, for Karen, about how have you engaged the people of Te Puke outside your volunteers to go co-design use of the rest of the building? Do you want to speak to what prompted you to ask that question? And then we can hear from Karen. I'll just unmute you. Oh, or I won't. No, I'm trying to unmute you.
Right, I think I am now unmuted. Thank you. It needed you and me to do that one. Yeah, I was just really interested. I guess it was a follow-up to the question about how do you know that the people of Te Puke wanted what you're doing? Because to set up your trust, you've got a good group of volunteers going, and they're really keen and enthusiastic, and they haven't lost that enthusiasm yet, which is fantastic. Well done. But I guess my question is, how was the community involved, not just in giving money to keep the post office operating, but you said it's only a very small part of the building. So at some point you've made some, or your trust has made some decisions about how to use the rest of the building. And so I was curious to know to what extent the wider public in Te Puke were involved in informing that decision and involved in that process. And if they were involved, how did you involve them?
Okay. Initially we did a big scoping report, which went out and did some engagement, quite serious engagement with people around whether or not we needed a visitors and information centre, and the actual concept. We went to the local community market and had Saturdays down there with a tent and draw us what you would see in a community in this sort of a space. That was prior to the building, prior to actually the post office taking over the post office building. And then we were under a lot of stress to get something to the architects, because the landlord wanted to split the building into 2 buildings. He wanted to know whether we were going to take on the long-term lease. We negotiated a very short-term lease of a year, which put us under pressure. So we did the very best. We put the concept plans up on the walls in there, and we've got a Facebook page, and we invited a lot of the comments and things like that about concept. But in the end, we sort of had to make the call to get within the time frame that we had available, and we're sort of running out of time now as to whether or not we go ahead with the project or we don't.
Thank you.
I wonder if, oh yeah, Kate, I was going to hit you up, Kate, and I see you've put in a comment. Are you happy just to speak to your comment? Because I think you'll probably have insights from the different part of the world you sit in.
Kia ora tātou. My name's Kate. I'm a philanthropy consultant. I work with a bunch of funders, and I quite often sit in rooms where people are going, oh, the funders don't get it, and I think you're probably right. So one of the things I've been thinking about is there's a sort of unintended consequence about focusing on need, and you're talking about it, Karen, when you're talking about the vital signs, and here's where the need is. So therefore, the obvious thing to fund is social services that directly address that need. But actually, that's quite a top-down doing to kind of model. So maybe we need to be talking more about, okay, what is the community's aspirations? And probably the community's aspirations are around being being self-supporting, being following people's dreams, whatever it is. And then maybe with that kind of framing, it's easier for funders to fund community-led enterprise. Because personally, I'm a huge fan of community-led development in any form, because that's the world we want, where we look after each other rather than having services come in and do things to us. So I think I'm rambling, but there's probably a bit of a mind shift that needs to happen in the funding world around moving from need to aspiration and what that might look like.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Kate. And I wonder if I can impose on Trish. You've shared an interesting comment here, and a couple of other people have talked about the need to pivot, even though I hate that word. It's going to get overused at the moment. Trish, are you happy to speak to your comment?
Yeah. So I run a community centre in Wellington, and over the past few years, well, we lost our community centre, and then we leased a place for 10 years, and then decided that we didn't want to do that anymore because it was just, we were dealing with leaky buildings and, you know, earthquake prone buildings and all of that. And the last thing we wanted to do was buy or lease another place. So we decided to look at all the groups that were in our community, and we set up partnerships with them. It took a long time to set in place and set in motion, and a lot of meetings and a lot of chats, but they had existing buildings that were either churches or school halls, or even, you know, sort of like, we were thinking like people's front living rooms if they wanted to run something out of that. And it was to open up spaces that were already there and not expect to, not you know, there was nowhere in our area that we could buy or lease, and just to work around that. And the community, like, we went out to the community and spoke a lot to them about this, and they were a bit anti it at the beginning because they were like, but we need a centre, we need a space, but they came around to the way of, you know, to the, you know, the way of thinking that we were putting to them. And like, now we've got partnerships with our community gardens and the halls that they have there, run annual dinners, or well, we run several dinners a year, which bring people together. So the money that we were spending on a lease, we now put it back into the community and run events. We did run events and run, you know, just connecting people. I think that was the most important thing, and just being a face in the community as well. That I'm paid by the council to do what I do, but I basically go out and just bring people together to make things happen, which has been really, really amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We're just getting a bit tight for time. I want to just share one quick thought and then go back to Karen very briefly for anything that you can take. Is there anything that's sort of gelled or taken from you? And for me, my brief thought is around potential reset. Like, it seems there are a number of challenges in this, and rather than using the word pivot, but a reset around how you tell your story and how you reach is something that's sticking in my head. Karen, last thought from you.
Oh, well, just thank you to everyone for their input. I mean, it's really good to share a problem, and you know, we do have a problem. You know, we face imminent danger of having to, you know, pass the post office on to somebody else and shut the building down and look at other ways of operating. And you know, the aspirations, the frustration from the trustees is huge. You know, to have worked so hard and to be before our time, and not to have been able to convince the funders that this innovational work was worth backing. So one of the things I've taken away is that thing around aspiration versus need. You know, we're often having to go to funders around need and, you know, prove your need. Actually, this was an aspiration from the community. This was something that is going to grow, or was going to grow into something, and it was going to evolve. We didn't have all the answers. We don't have all the answers, and we just wanted the space to grow. So I think that's a really thing for me, is that, you know, just start focusing on the aspiration, hold on to the aspiration, not go back into that need-based thing. Kia ora.
Thank you so much to Karen and Nicola for that session, and to everyone for contributing. Really great to hear so many different views in there. Just another reminder to keep collaborating through that document for this session, which you'll find in the program. Keep in touch, keep supporting each other, because that's what this is all about. And please do jump over into that Aroha room. You'll see the link on the program for our final session, which is about to start. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The links to the Te Puke Centre is on the document, if you wanted to look at it. Okay, cheers, bye.
Thanks everyone.